Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so there will be a 10-second timer followed by welcome to Radio Finance, and then you can start.
Okay.
Candy, can you turn on your camera, please?
Okay, yeah.
Welcome to Radio Finance.
Good afternoon. It is 4 p.m. in Singapore and 9 a.m. in London. Welcome to our Radio Finance virtual dialogue. Are banks ready for data-driven customer experience and real-time risk management? We have with us a distinguished group of senior executives in technology, risk, and data from some of the leading financial institutions in Southeast Asia. They will share with us their perspective on how they are rethinking technology and productizing data to drive business value, real-time risk management, and also ransomware resilience. I'm Neeti Agarwal, Senior Research Manager at the Asian Banker, and I will be your host for next 90 minutes. So today we'll look at some of the key areas around data strategies and how banks are designing their data framework and strategies. So how banks can transform towards an agile and future-oriented data architecture to drive revenue and mitigate risks. Operationalizing real-time analytics and AI to drive contextualized experience for customers. How to build an effective protection, resilience, and intelligence framework to address the growing ransomware challenge. And the complexities and best practice in real-time risk management, data security, and data immutability. We hope to have an engaging and interactive discussion and strongly encourage questions from the audience. So the virtual dialogue guests, they can participate by sharing their comments and questions with our panelists using raise hand function at the Zoom. While the ones listening via Facebook, they can drop theirs in the comment section. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce our guests now. We have with us Han Hui Chong, his Group Chief Risk Officer at RHB Bank. Kamaruzaman bin Mohammed Noah, he's Head of Operations for Malaysia and Regional Transformation at Maybank. Hendy Gunawan, he's Head of Data Governance at Maybank. Swee Leong Ang, he's MD, Regional Head of Group Legal and Compliance at CIMB. Thomas D'Souza, he's CTO, Financial Services, Europe, Middle East, and Africa at Hitachi Vantara. Suraj Kotipalli, he's APAC Business Leader, Content and Data Intelligence Solution at Hitachi Vantara. And Elaine, Principal Consultant, Southeast Asia for Commvault. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I look forward to a lively discussion. So financial sector dynamics have evolved rapidly with the entry of new and nimble agile players. The customers now expect a more seamless, contextual, and more personalized service from their banks. And to be able to provide this, banks need to utilize data much more effectively, apply advanced analytics to better understand customers, and also predict their needs more accurately. Real-time analytics can actually allow them to have more meaningful customer interaction, as well as drive revenue opportunities through precise and targeted marketing. However, achieving this is not easy as banks face numerous challenges. Increased digital connectivity with billions of interconnected devices has led to an explosion of structured and unstructured data for banks. On the other hand, banks are saddled with complex legacy technology architecture with numerous data silos. By integrating these to have a single customer view and real-time risk management remains a challenge for many. They also struggle to ensure the quality and timeliness of data to drive accurate business decision with speed. In addition, the data security and compliance challenges have also increased. Recently, we've read reports that reveal ransomware attacks have increased by almost 150% in 2020. The cyber attacks have become much more sophisticated, innovative, and organized, and even targeting the backup data. The repercussions for this is enormous for banks, not just monetary, but also reputational. So given these, banks really need to rethink their data architecture and analytics framework much more strategically and holistically. They need to address evolving customer needs, ensure data governance, immutability, and also data protection in real time. So coming to the first topic of discussion today, which is transforming towards an agile and future-oriented data architecture to drive revenue. Now, to drive intelligence-based decisions in revenue, the data architecture would need to integrate multiple data systems and silos. I want to understand where the banks are on this journey. So perhaps we can start with Hendy. And if you can share with us, where is your bank on this journey? What has been your experience, as well as some of the key challenges you faced in this whole process? Share with us initiatives, how you are addressing these challenges.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned earlier by Niti, that our current challenges, sorry, I'm speaking for Maybank Indonesia here because,
Sure.
Yeah, we have colleagues from Maybank. The biggest challenge that we face right now, as Niti mentioned, is all the legacy systems that we have in our banks, with all different systems for funding, for credit cards, for loans, etc. So it really have a lot of different data format, etc. So that's what our biggest challenges right now, if we want to integrate them. But I think some of the initiatives that we currently have also with the head office in Malaysia, including future initiatives that move towards integration. Yeah. For example, for enterprise metadata management tools and a data science platform, we work together with all related parties in Malaysia and Singapore, so we can have more or less common tools or common platforms that we can work together. So the data integration from the data warehouse or even from the external data can be managed better in the future, Niti.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So it's like, as you mentioned, legacy systems and different data formats is a big challenge that most banks have. So, yeah. And share with us some of the initiatives also about how you're integrating these multiple systems. So where are you prioritizing? Which systems to integrate first? Perhaps you can share about that.
Some of the systems that we try to integrate, the priority will be the risk and financial related systems, because we have regulatory reporting for us, and of course for risk we have Basel and all of those kind of initiatives. Okay. So I think those two related systems and reports are prioritized over the others, Niti. But then again, for data science and analytics, we also use those data, so it's more or less that we move together. But I think the main subjects that we are very interested right now is around risk and financial reporting. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Han, perhaps we could have your a view on this as well. So share with us some experience as well as, in this journey so far and some of the initiatives you've undertaken. As we heard from Hendy about the challenges with regards to legacy systems as well. So how is your bank building agile data flows to ensure and collate all this data for customers, and how are you utilizing this data with speed?
Thanks for the question, Niti. Very good afternoon to everyone. I think I'll approach this in a multiple ways. The challenges that we are facing, and I'm sure to a certain extent across the region, is about the different speed of maturity of changes that is required, right? We are talking from the IT platform, we're talking about the integration at the front, and we're talking about even on the resource challenges, methodologies. So certain things that potentially on the method side is rather easier for us, given that we potentially having the skill sets in-house and we're able to develop that, but to then roll that out, that itself can also be a challenge depending on whether the system is ready, whether people are ready. I think when we look at agility, I think that we are looking at the targeted, more targeted areas. What do we really want to achieve? I think digitalization is one key area for us, and we have embarked on digitalizing the bank for quite some time now, even pre my time. Agile as a way of working, and we as a bank is also very big in that, and we have flipped quite a few areas in Agile, and in fact I think we are at pretty much at the last mile, potentially at the more of a support function area that is, I would say, yet to flip, but doesn't mean like we are not performing, we are not managing in an agile manner. And I think key for us at the moment is digital, and to make sure that the platform is ready, connectivity is good, and also Niti, you mentioned about how do we then personalize it to our customers. I think those are the key area of focus. Likewise, from a risk management perspective, the product that we're going to come up with from a risk perspective, from a personalization perspective, even from all the regulatory perspective, all those then needs to be looked at in a more holistic manner, rather than when we look at a single product like how we have been looking at them for a long time, right? A mortgage is a mortgage, personal loan is a personal loan, and it's no longer that way. I mean, if we look at personal loan as one single product, from a risk management perspective, it's straightforward, right? I mean, from a system perspective, it's straightforward. But when you want to personalize that, we want to make it at a customer level and apply analytics, apply AI on it. I think all those, the bank, I'm sure at a different speed, we are all embarking into those. I think the real challenge is how do we then make sure that everything sort of move in tandem, rather than, if one part of it is lagging, then it will pull everything behind.
Certainly. So speed, that's one key part. And of course, building the system in such a way that you're able to build analytics, be able to personalize the interaction. Definitely, that's the other part. But with regard, and I'm aware that RHB has been working a lot towards agile systems. So give us some understanding of how you're building agile data flows. So if there are any specific initiatives you've taken towards, having those real-time data flows or agile data flows by connecting your different systems. So if you can just briefly comment on that as well.
I think we kind of move backward. Our starting point is always on customer experience. I think that when we start off with customer experience and then move backward to see what we really need to do, rather than coming from almost like a bottom up, like what we need to do, and therefore potentially with what we can do, right? I think those are the key to, in our view, to drive objective that we're striving for.
Okay, perfect. Great. So at this point, let me ask Mr. Kamaruzzaman. So tell us what changes were required in your data and technology foundation to address this real-time data capability. What are some of the key challenges you faced, and how did you build that foundation, especially targeted towards advanced analytics?
Okay, thanks, Niti, and thanks for the question. So I just wanted to go back down the memory lane, if I can use that term. So we have embarked on this journey for quite some time, at least 5 years back, and data today has been a lot more meaningful in Maybank, as we mentioned by my colleague as well as my fellow banker in RHB, Mr. Han. And I just wanted to start with back then, we kind of know what we want. And of course, this came from multiple items or multiple, I wouldn't say issue, but more of problem statement, for lack of a better word. And back then, we know what we want. And from there, we had the challenge of selecting the right data and then pinpointing which would be the right source of this data. And at the same time, that also provides us with the opportunity to find the right tool, okay, to get all this data. And I think I can share with you the source of this data, as we all are aware, it came from our backend system, it came from our host systems, and it came from even the LOS, right? It contains a lot of data, all right? And let's say if you talk about outstandings, you talk about impairments, you talk about areas, the data are all at fingertips, right? So that's why I was saying, by knowing what we want, then we work backwards, what sort of data we wanted to see, and at which source. Even for in my own experience, for the same data, sometimes it is available in multiple platforms within the bank. All right, and so it all boils down to what exactly you want. I would call it the data currency, whether you want it T-1 or whether you want it T+0 real time. And at the same time, when we were part of this project, we always ask the question, yes, we have this data, but what sort of details do you want? Whether you want it to be just account activity or it's just a static account data. All right. So we went down to that detail, and again, I wanted to point back to this created an opportunity for us to find the right tool to use in the bank. And I'm happy to share that I think in the last 5 years, we have explored RPA, robotic process automation, where again, I'm sure all of you would agree with me, when it comes to data, then somebody in the bank need to download this data, need to filter this data. And I think the Asians, when I say Asians, when I move around the regions, they like to use the word data massaging. You know, so basically, to me, it's all about filtering the data. And again, we use Python in terms of finding the right indicator, setting the right parameters, and I'm sure these are nothing new to you. And also, we use a lot of APIs in our data. I would say data interaction. So yeah, and I think I just want to touch also. When we do this, we look at all angles, whether it is from risk perspective, whether it's from financial perspective, and again, I think Han mentioned just now, regulatory perspective, profit, and last but not least is profitability perspective. And I think for us in at least in Malaysia, you know that for transparency in terms of financial reporting, we also has helped. I mean, our tools has helped a lot in FRS reporting when it comes to greater transparency. All right. Yeah. And so, I mean, keyword from here that I want to share with you is we have moved quite tremendously in terms of tool utilization in helping us, especially when it comes to risk management and as well as forward risk management as well. Yeah. So that's from me.
Sorry, yeah. So you touched upon some of the very key areas. So replicated data within the organization, and of course, use of data for RPAs and APIs, and how you can build an interconnected system around that. A quick question. Are you also exploring cloud in your digital transformation journey? What type of cloud strategy and design you are adopting for this?
I think for us in the bank, we have not fully utilized cloud for a certain related data and certain function, right? And due to risk exposure, but those that are considered less critical, we do explore that on a day-to-day or on a need basis. Yeah, but then again, I just wanted to share with you, at least in Maybank, we are. Everything is within within the servers ourselves. We do not go on a cloud. Yes, yeah.
All right. Okay. Okay. So we have with us Razak as well. Razak Idris, he's the head of Transformation Management Office at Bank Muamla. So Razak has already joined us now. So Razak, probably we can get some views from you as well. You know, how share with us, you know, how you are prioritizing real-time data flows, how you're building that right foundation for real-time data and advanced analytics in your bank. So share with us, and also, you know, what kind of impact this is bringing for you. So share with us some perspective on that.
Yeah, okay, thanks. First of all, apologies for joining a bit late. I had a meeting with the regulator just now and had to address a few questions from them. Hi, Dr. Han. I know we worked before a few years back, right? Okay. So to that question, right, I think from our perspective, Muamalat is actually one of the smallest bank here, to be frank, in Malaysia, right? But from our perspective as well, that size actually gives us that flexibility or agility to implement things a quick fast, and to really nail down or implement exactly what we need to do. So in this case, we actually, to create the agility of data flow between front to back, we actually created a few interfaces that allows the customer to directly input the data, and it was routed into the back end of our processing quite quickly from the moment they enter and right back to the back. And that allows us to actually speed up the processing speed and getting up all these AMLA checking, regulatory checking, this eKYC and so on and so forth. Okay, so that actually helps us to be better agility. But of course, right, I think not much different from the other banks in Malaysia. Our infrastructure is still a bit of legacy. Our core banking solution actually has a lot of limitation that we have to address. So that's one of the key challenges that we are still trying to address, and we somehow managed to resolve it through a combination of automation plus a bit of human intervention here and there. So it's a mixed approach. And then of course the other thing is similar the other banks in Malaysia as well. Regulatory has been quite a key challenge to convince our regulator that we are doing good. We are actually addressing all the regulatory requirements, and we're taking our customer requirement as to the core. That's all our key challenges.
Okay, got it. All right. So fantastic. So I mean, legacy is one challenge with almost most of the banks are facing. So and we've heard that repeatedly from our panelists today. So perhaps at this point, Ang, I would like to take some feedback from you as well. You know, what is an effective strategy for data architecture, how to drive revenue capabilities, advanced analytics. Perhaps you can share some of the initiatives that you have undertaken and that have actually brought about a change in your business revenues and profitability.
Hi, Niti. I wish I could say it's all about revenue, but I think my colleagues from the other two banks have mentioned, the first perspective of lens we look at is a combination of what the reporting or use case objectives are. Some could be revenue, some could be risk management. I think the Maybank speaker talked about better transparency in FRS reporting. So the strategy for many of us at the moment is more of how do we optimize pre-existing use. It may not be revenue driven. It may be efficiency, it may be effectiveness. And bear in mind, for banks in particular, many of us have had legacy data architectures. You can call it a data warehouse, you can call it an EIS. It's just that the technology has now evolved to a point where we can aggregate, do better metadata and master data management than before. So in terms of optimizing, the lenses that we look through are multifold. One is strategic. Are we at a stage where we don't have a platform or do have a platform? Is the strategy to migrate, whether it's to cloud or just to an enterprise-wide platform, or is it an incremental step? So there's no one size fits all in terms of strategy. The most important part right now is to assess what you already have, the maturity of your platforms, and the priorities in terms of what use cases need to be enhanced further. Within our bank, we are running multiple initiatives based on various data sets available. Some could be focused on robotics and processing optimization. Some could be more focused on, as you rightly put it, revenue and insights. So in each case, the appropriate approach would be to do a detailed business study, do your justification, and match the justification to the returns. It need not necessarily be revenue. It could be cost minimization. It could be more efficient or better coverage in terms of analytics of customers' behavior and products.
Yeah.
The main thing to this is proper quantification. The days of a simple business case are gone. People need to analyze and justify the population of data and what they expect to see as a return.
Yes, certainly. So it's various aspects. It's not just revenue, it's cost as well as, risk management. And so data is permeating across business functions, definitely. So, but again, I'm coming back to it. So in terms of, for example, creating real-time data flows, as we've been discussing, are there some major changes that you did which improved your functions in such a way? Also, a quick perspective on agile data. So has CIMB taken initiatives towards building agility in its data probably through clouds or some other initiatives you want to talk about it?
I think we need to look at a bank slightly different from other industries. Banks are financial service providers. That sounds very fancy until you realize that finance means numbers, numbers means data. Probably the most critical item is our data in whatever form, from bank accounts to transactional flows. The adoption of cloud in particular brings with it a lot of risks and regulations. If we look at other countries first, for example, China has implemented their data security law. There's not so much the technical element of it, but they are essentially treating data like a valuable commodity. Within the laws, they talk about export controls and sanctions. So if you look at financial services, the cloud will not necessarily be an enterprise level migration. It could be based on certain use cases and certain classes of data that either the bank deems to be more matured and ready or less vulnerable to attacks. I can't speak for everyone here, but in ASEAN in particular, we've noted that the cloud migration of the data itself has been baby steps. Most of the cloud utilization has been more on software as a service, tools where the data remains on-premise. Again, there's no one size fits all, right? It's simply that our data is not just our most valuable assets. Banks have a fiduciary role to play, and we have to protect that data for the good of our account holders, lenders, borrowers, and investors. Okay, got it. So primarily because of the data security and data privacy issues, and understood. All right. So at this point, let me ask Thomas from Hitachi Vantara to should share his perspective also. Give us an industry experience. Share with us what is an effective strategy and right design for data architecture to drive revenue, and of course various other cost efficiencies and requirements that banks have from their data.
Thanks, Nadi. I think we're witnessing a bit of a sea change in terms of data architecture. And, I obviously work across a number of different, large financial organizations, but I think there's probably kind of three key trends. I think, as I mentioned, we are seeing that change in architecture, but we're also seeing that across, existing BI systems. I think, other participants mentioned that earlier on, there's an evolution. They have existing systems in place. There's legacy things like big data, there's other data platforms. So, what we've had before is starting to change. I think one of the key kind of pivotal components of this is the emergence of cloud native technologies and also from a data analytics perspective, high performance compute. This is kind of, allowing us to have new capabilities. So this is, faster analytics, so real-time analysis across much larger data sets, and also if we start to embrace like AI, machine learning and deep learning, we start to open up new capabilities within within the type of products and services that financial services organizations can provide. I think, looking at kind of, when you think about this change in terms of the architecture, how does that impact my operating model, my business, my products from a financial services perspective? I think I would agree with Ang, and, the opportunity is beyond revenue, because it could be efficiency, it could be cost reduction, it could be increases in control. These are all, important components of running a bank. But I think, one of the big things for me is that it increases agility. Especially these sets of technologies and architectural changes allows you to create a common converged platform and a set of tooling that reduces the complexity. And this makes data available to a wider community and makes the data more embeddable, more usable, and also the methods, whether that's advanced analytic components or that is kind of new types of data, both structured and unstructured. It starts to kind of create a new common platform for using data to drive revenue, but obviously the other benefits that you would see. I would say that, what I'm seeing and what we're working with some of our clients with, when we look at things like risk that was mentioned, we're seeing our clients looking at new mechanisms, not just things like VAR or extended shortfall. They're using other, machine learning methods like XGBoost to assess risk within their organization. I think it was mentioned before, but we're also seeing natural language processing, which is a very large kind of component of machine learning being used for robo-advisors. And we're also seeing kind of, everyday kind of reporting type activities where, before we used to kind of churn them out, cookie cutter, we're actually starting to be able to analyze those reports, both the structured and unstructured data to derive meaning. So, we're seeing some really different use cases. And I think this, I think for me, in terms of like, if we kind of focus on revenue, the top line revenue growth opportunity is really around kind of new classes of products, right? I mean, you could imagine, if private wealth advisors are obviously big in Southeast Asia and also Singapore. you could see these new types of robo-advisors providing in-depth, analysis against people's portfolios or investments, the type of service that you would get from a private banker in the past. And also, if you kind of extend that out, you could see, someone like myself choosing a bank account because I could have a specific personality or advisor to help me. So I think there is both the technology is changing, but I also think this is having a major impact on financial services right across the board.
Definitely. So, and we're seeing some of the, you mentioned a few very emerging technologies that are having a lot of impact across banks, AI and as well as advanced analytics. So now at this point, I want to talk a bit about ransomware and cyber attacks as well. So we've seen a surge in these attacks across the banks during the pandemic. So banks need a multi-layered defense mechanism to protect their systems and data from such attacks. Now, how are banks building an effective protection and resilient data frameworks for ransomware and cyber attacks? So perhaps we could hear from Han first. So, Han, what are some of the essential elements to achieve this, to ensure there is minimal impact of these ransomware attacks and ensure business continuity during these attacks? So maybe you can talk a bit about the challenges and of course, what are the essential elements to face those?
I think challenges is always going to be the speed of or this perpetrator to be able to penetrate the world that we built, right? It seems to be much faster, at a much faster pace as compared to what bank is able to cope. Whilst the bank, at least from an RHB perspective, whilst we continue to harden ourselves on the outer wall, I think key for us is also to make sure that the speed of detection and if we got penetrated, then how do we respond and how quick do we respond to that? Because I think in this day and age that thinking that we won't get penetrated, I don't think that is something that we thought so. So I would think that monitoring, detection, as well as how do we then react to it, I think it is quite key. Of course, then the usual protection of our data, what we need to do, I think all those things are rather BAU work for us on a daily basis. If we see any vulnerability, then of course then we will put on more controls surrounding it. I think practicality wise, that the challenge is do we still have sufficient skilled resources in town, right? From Malaysia perspective as an industry, I think the skill set is still rather limited as compared to some other more advanced countries. I think those are the areas that we need to be a bit more creative in terms of how do we look at cyber risk altogether. I think that's my take.
Yes, certainly. So, the speed of detection, the reaction, and of course, skilled resources, you touched upon some very important points here. What about data storage and, ensuring that data is completely secured in terms of backend, even if there's an attack and you're able to prevent, if you're not able to prevent those attacks, the business continuity is managed at that point of time. So any particular initiatives around data storage or ensuring that the data is completely secure in such an attack? Any view on that as well?
I think as a bank, we have embarked into multi-layers securities for quite some time now. But as mentioned, given that new risks evolve and emerge on a daily basis, unfortunately, we don't know what we don't know, but what we know is to make sure that those multi-layers, we do continue to test them and to try to penetrate them to identify vulnerabilities. I think those are the key. And we, as a bank, also embarking into quite a big time into how we look at emerging risks. I think to make sure that we are ahead of the curve. If you ask me, I don't think we are there yet, but we are definitely building all the necessary building blocks to get us to look at all those emerging threats and emerging risks that we should be proactively managing before it even hits us. I think those are the key for us at this stage.
Okay, thanks. So, Ang, perhaps some view from you as well. How do banks need to redesign their data protection and storage to ensure ransomware resilience? And what has been your strategy and design at your bank?
Maybe we separate the two issues. Dr. Han has already talked a lot about defense in layers. We need to understand the fundamental operation or approach or vector of ransomware. Ransomware is not something that happens instantaneously. The defense perimeter of an institution has to be first compromised. The ransomware will then build up its little building blocks, I use the term loosely, until the day zero or the strike point. Then everything starts to propagate, PCs start going down, servers start going down, and so on and so forth. So the main challenge with modern day technology is that you talk about storage, you talk about BCM, a lot of systems replicate in near real time. So my backup, my disaster recovery site will have almost identical settings to my production environment. And that's where ransomware can become very dangerous, because they've already built the same parts, the same infected malware, probably in your backups as well. If you cut over and swing to the BR site or to your recovery site, you probably go down after that as well. So to the earlier part, right, it's the risk assessment, the impact assessment, and to work out the issue or the root cause, so that when we cut over to that, when we ensure we go to the other side, we don't infect the other side as well. It's quite technical. Folks will have to work out, oh, maybe my current week's data systems are already equally infected. I may have to restore an image from a month ago. So the main reason why ransomware and resilience is very challenging is that it's not just flip the switch or trigger a tool. A lot of analysis goes into play. The other part that Dr. Han briefly mentioned is, are we ahead of the curve? A lot of times today, ransomware on other perpetrators appear to be or are alleged to be state-sponsored or state-linked actors. We must humble ourselves to think that there is a high likelihood that these actors may have better resources than even a bank. I know that sounds very frightening, but if you look at their ability to attack infrastructure, financial institutions, telecommunications, these people are well-resourced, well-motivated, and probably have higher-end tools and capabilities than some of the commercial providers. So to your point, the strategy is continuous evolution, analysis, reaction to your point, but also the main thing is hygiene. The funny part about data, since we're on the subject, is data and system hygiene is very important. You need to keep your systems clean. You need to vet or determine what happens when you open up new connectivity. there's no secret sauce to this. The regulators have put a lot of thought into it as well. The guidelines across ASEAN and Asia are actually very prescriptive. The main thing is, one, proper interpretation of those guidelines, and two, comprehensive implementation of those requirements.
Perfect. Great. So you touched upon some of the very key areas here as well. So, you know, how to stay ahead of curve, which is obviously very difficult because of the as you mentioned, being amount of resource that is available to them, the speed of change, and how to ensure your data at your back end, you know, in terms of disaster recovery is also secure, is equally secure. So therefore, perhaps detect the threat in time. So perhaps, Elaine, at this point, you can share with us your experience with banks in the region, and, you know, what have you been seeing with regards to, you know, what is an effective strategy and some of the best practices that you have been seeing?
Yeah, thanks, Niti. And I really echo what Ang has said, right? It's true. We cannot keep up. The ransomware proprietors have basically all the technology they need, you know, to come up with things faster than we can even, you know, come up with things. So having a multi-layered approach, right, is key. And this applies to not just your production data, but also your backup data, because the last thing we need is that when we're hit with a ransomware attack and we're not able to recover, like what Ang mentioned, right, it's all about the speed of response, the speed of recovery. So being able to recover as fast as possible in the event you need to, it's very key. And therefore, we need to ensure basically whatever data protection solution that we put into place or how we secure our backup data, it's crucial, right? You know, having measures to ensure the proper authorization, authentication, or access to the backup data, you know, ensuring that only the correct or the right people have access to it, having locks in place to ensure that your backup data is not tampered with, right? So these are basically some of the key areas that we'll need to put into when it comes to the design of your data protection solution. And aside from that, right, the active monitoring as well of both the live data as well as the backup data. You know, when you see anomalies, you know, changes in the backup patterns and all that, being able to detect that and respond to it as quickly as possible allows us to then mitigate the risk when it comes to ransomware attack. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So Suraj, a quick comment from you as well, from Hitachi's point of view, some of the best practice you may have seen.
Absolutely. I think, first of all, good afternoon to all the panelists and, you know, the audience as well. Niti, this is a really important topic and very, very critical for a lot of organizations, right? We have seen almost 200% increase in ransomware attacks in this post-pandemic world. I think I'm not really bored about why is it important and all that. I think we all know that not just bank, everyone has to have a very good ransomware mitigation strategy, right? I would say it can be taken into 4 different areas. One is having a very good communications and training policy, which is, I would say, a cyber resiliency or cyber insurance policy within the organization. So which includes training to the employees in terms of how to look at those suspicious emails that are coming in, when to open, when not to open. They need to be very, very, very clear. Ensuring that in the event, because these attacks will happen, organizations are really, really vulnerable in terms of the skills and the agility of these hackers coming into it, right? So these attacks will happen. The question here is, how do we react to that, right? What kind of strategies that you have for employees to respond back to it, and communications, the stakeholders, that is one area. Having a good communication and a cyber insurance policy is one. Second, ensuring right level of authentication, right? And the encryption strategies, because the data need to be protected not only just where it resides, but also during the transit, okay? Because data is not just in one place, it is moving, right? So it is going to cloud, it is coming back, it's going to, you know, vendors, partners. We need to ensure data during transit as well as data at rest, both are encrypted, at the same time having a good authentication policies. And Ellen touched upon that topic just briefly on that, right? The other third important point here on the ransomware protection is Honestly, we can have a great strategies on the back at the data center level, have a right set of tools and technologies. But I would say what we are seeing in the industry is the data at the endpoints, especially at the laptops, desktops, all mobiles, where these users are actually carrying it, right? They are the most vulnerable. In this post-pandemic, people are working from everywhere. And people are using their own routers, they're using their own networking, their own devices to connect. How do we ensure that the data is protected at that place, right? Of course, media technology is good, but there's a lot of other data in these endpoint devices. So having a good technologies to automatically sync the data from the endpoints into the data center, and in the event of any attack, how do we actually help these users to quickly recover the data from the central location and give it back to them, right? Because a lot of banks have a policy of not paying to these ransomware hackers. Whatever it is, they're not going to pay, because that's an insurance, that's a policy. We don't want to increase this ransomware hackers by paying to them. So which means we need to see how we can give the data back to the users. And the last point here is the last line of defense, obviously, is backups, right? When the attacks happen, the only way you can recover and give the data is where we have these backups. And these ransomware hackers are actually attacking the backups as well these days, right? So ensuring something like using some kind of object storage solutions, working with partners with like Commvault, to really have a good backup solution where, hey, it's completely locked. Okay, we have some kind of object lock, data immutability solution where in whatever scenario it is, even if ransomware attack happens, they cannot change that particular data. It will create another version of it, but not modify the original one, right? I think these are different strategies that we can take all together, because not just one strategy works, right? You need to look at the holistic view to protect and have a good mitigation strategy. And as Hans said, Mr. Ang said, attacks are going to happen. Okay, nobody is 100% foolproof on this. So the question here is, do we have a good policy of recovering it or mitigating that risk? So that's what.
Perfect. Good. So it's data in transit, it's data as backup, it's the real-time data, and good to hear various perspectives on how to ensure data immutability there. So and the other angle that we want to touch upon is around data governance. So because data security, data immutability is fine, but also ensuring data quality, reliability, ensuring proper data governance has become critical to have this data actionable and insightful. So perhaps, Hendy, at this point, I would like to hear from you. What are some of the challenges with regards to data governance that you, and how are you ensuring proper data governance at your bank, especially with regards, because the volumes of data, the structured and unstructured data volumes have increased so much. So how are you addressing this data governance issue?
Okay, I think the biggest challenge, I can mention several of them actually, because they are all very big for us actually. First of all, people, which is probably, it's quite surprising, but a lot of people, even within the bank, sees data governance is as an additional responsibilities or jobs, instead of seeing them as a value because data is a new oil, etc. But so I think it will need more time. If I can imagine, like 15 years ago when I started as a data analytics or data scientist, they don't even know that, and they don't buy everyone will think. So I think especially for Indonesia, maybe it will take another couple of years before data governance sees as the part of data management, and the data quality is important for a lot of aspects in financial industries, and of course in other industries also. The second challenges, of course, as mentioned earlier, is the systems, etc. And the third challenges is about data protection, especially since, as you mentioned, we have a lot of structured, unstructured data, and what we have done, especially in Maybank Indonesia, we take care first of the PII information, the sensitive data, etc. So other data we can have more relaxed policy, yeah. So even if we use cloud, as some of the colleagues mentioned earlier, we usually choose which information that we can transfer to the cloud platform. So especially the PII and all other sensitive information, we have stricter policies, because we also need to to manage, to have as few people as possible to assess that information. But for other information, usually we give more freedom, Niti.
Yeah, certainly. So so PII and of course customer data is much more sanctious for the bank. You have to be much more careful about that. So, and which you mentioned that you've got, so which essentially means that you're prioritizing the data which is more sensitive and with regards to risk management. Understood your point. So Razak, at this point, maybe you can also talk about that as well and share with us, how are you handling this issue of fragmented data ownership, and also the standardization of data processes in order to have a better data governance?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. I think from our perspective, we always go back to the 3 key things as in normal when we approach this kind of projects, programs. And we look at the people part, we look at the process and governance part, and we look at the technology part. On the process and governance, we actually establish central council that we call it Data Management Council, that actually looks at the overall data management and data quality initiative, as well as also all the policies, procedures, and all the challenges that we need to address as a bank. With this central governance, it actually enables us to centralize all these key common issues that happens across the different views and different lines of business as well as operations. Then this council actually drive and actually determines what types of policies, what types of processes, and what type of initiative that actually we need to undertake to address all the important or key challenges that we need to address. On the process part, we look at all these sorts of policies and processes. Of course, we came out with data warehouse policies, data management policies, even data quality policies and processes, and so on and so forth. So that actually helps us to standardize across the board, and we actually try to define or actually assign data ownership to the business and make sure that each type of data are properly defined with their respective owners and what are these owners were supposed to do. And then on the people side, we look at capability, we look at data analytics training, we look at ensuring that our people have the right skill sets and the right knowledge to actually implement all these data related initiative. And we actually, we designed our training program based on what actually they need and the level from the management and working levels and so on and so forth. And then we also, in a way, put a sort of a carrot and stick approach. We actually put data governance or data quality perspective into our KPI to make sure people actually implement all these policies and procedures and make it as a day-to-day practices. From the technology sides, we look at implementing technologies like data warehouse, data lakes, and we also implement data quality tools and change data capture tools and so on, to make sure that all these initiatives and are able to be implemented, and we are able to actually measure what sort of impacts that we have from all these initiatives we are doing, and that's allowing us to improve all our action plans.
Okay, perfect. So it's the ownership of data, the resources, and of course, technology as a major enabler. And you mentioned a good point about KPIs and then how the impact you're actually measuring the impact that it's bringing. So that will make a difference. Understood. Okay. So, and perhaps a perspective from you around data immutability as well. So, how are banks ramping up, especially your bank, how are you ramping up risk management strategy around data security and regulatory compliance?
Maybe just to backtrack to the earlier part of your question, data governance and data quality guidelines have been around in banks for almost 10 years, primarily driven by the BIS or the Basel BCBS 239 requirements. It's very hard for a bank to assess credit or market risk if your data quality is not there. So the processes you talk about have been there for a while, governance councils and community and committees and the like. When people bring up the terms like data immutability, banks will be more familiar with terms like non-repudiation and integrity, meaning that that's your account number, that's your balance, that's your ID. So it's slightly different again. The security is just to ensure that whatever we have is not susceptible to unauthorized access, deletion, or alteration. It could be ransomware, it could be hacking, it could be fraud. The main thing that applies is that whatever data we have represents an accurate and timely description of the customer, the accounts, and even the bank's own financials. So when you talk about the risk management or the strategies, I don't want to go back to security in layers and the like. A lot of effort these days is more focused on really cleaning up and ensuring the data quality. Not just in the old-fashioned way of saying, the ID number is correct in system A and system B. A lot of effort, not only in CIMB, but a lot of banks are doing it, is now taking the opportunity to come up or enhance their existing single customer view, adding to that the layer of what people call data lineage. Where did that phone number come from? How sure are we his date of birth or the length of the relationship with the bank is accurate? How complete is the details about his portfolio and liabilities with the bank? So a lot of tools and a lot of investments we see, not only within ourselves, but within the industry, focus on master data management. People now rebrand, some vendors rebrand or package this as part of that data governance toolset. I'm not saying it hasn't been there before, but again, coming back to the earlier part about the strategy, as you build bigger and bigger data architectures, you want to ensure that the quality of the inputs are there. So depending on the maturity of the bank, whether the bank has already consolidated a lot of their data, the other efforts then will be A, secure what you have, B, establish a process where you can manage the various data sets before they become consolidated to ensure the data quality. That's a different concept to immutability compared to the more technical aspect of immutability. Immutability has been made popular by folks promoting blockchain and the like, and that's good for transactional immutability, but not necessarily for the larger data set that the bank owns.
Perfect. So data cleaning, of course, has become, having the right cleaned data is become actually much more important now because of the fact that you've got huge volumes of unstructured data from varied sources. To have it in the right format, to have it, you need to be sure about the quality of data.
Maybe just to jump in, sometimes the big issue is working out what's the version of truth. if you have a customer with 5 different accounts in 5 different systems, it's not about cleaning up. First and foremost, you must have a way of working out which is the correct one and which 2 are either out of date or incorrect,
Yes, yes, certainly. So perhaps at this point, Suraj, from Hitashi's point of view, a quick comment would you have on this, on what Ang just mentioned? So, these are some of the very key issues that we face in data governance today.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, there's some good comments and observations from the bankers on the panel, right? So, I mean, look, honestly, the data governance used to be very nice to have conversation for most of the organizations, though it is there for 10 years. But I think with the increasing focus on analytics, business intelligence, and the importance of regulatory compliance, this has become mandatory, right? And the issue here is not just the structured data. The unstructured data is growing at an exponential rate. So it becomes even more challenging to bring some kind of governance intelligence around this unstructured data, right? So as I look at it, what we are seeing with banks is more like a journey, right? Intelligent data governance is more like a journey. I think it all starts with identifying the key sources of the data within the organization, and then whether this is consistently being used, okay? Then everybody touched upon this, like detecting it, assessing it, and cleansing the data defects to have a better data quality, right? Then the next logical step from that is enhancing the metadata, the organizational metadata, to ensure proper data management techniques can be adopted, right? So once we have all this, then obviously managing the data processes, automating the processes by data aggregation, centralization, and reconciliation with the right level of extensions throughout the data lifecycle. But the most important one, finally, is to really bring the right level of detail that can be visually interpreted so that the businesses can make right level of business decisions and also ensure they meet the current and the future regulatory responsibilities as well. So I think this is what I really call all the aspects of data governance and as a journey. What are we doing in this space? I think, being a data company for more than 60 years. So what we do is we work with the banks and financial institutions. We bring the right level of the data governance solutions. We have the tools, the processes, the expertise that we have in this area, just to ensure that the organizations have every bit of data which is available, which is the first step. Make the data available. Is it insightful? And more importantly, it is actionable, right? So that's what we are partnering with all the banks and financial institutions across Asia.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So got it. All right. So and the other key element that we've talked about is, how to actually utilize this data, this real-time analytics and AI to drive customer journey. So the fact that even if we have the right data architecture and the right foundation, you need to have the application of advanced analytics on top of it to predict customers, to personalize service, to have the ability for real-time decision making. Now, I want to hear from Kamaru about what's happening at Maybank. How is your bank utilizing real-time analytics and AI effectively to enable you to offer a more contextualized experience to customers? Perhaps you can share with us some tangible examples how you've achieved this and how this has impacted your bank.
All right, thanks, Niti. So yes, we do have that technology at the moment where it is currently used for some of the claims processes as well as monitoring the areas. All right, and but I think I wanted to just go back slightly on the point that was discussed earlier in terms of data quality. Right, I think again the challenges is on having the proper data in the right format, and of course, if the data is clean, then the next tool that is taking on the filtering and the decision making would be able to do it smoothly, all right? But then again, if we are dealing with data that need to be looked into, so that's where it kind of hampers the decision making process, and that's why it goes into the repair queue and it goes back into the manual queue, right? So, but having said that, we do have that in our setup today, where, for example, like in our insurance arm, real-time data, for example, like all those applications are submitted, they are indeed being transmitted via the tools that we have today, be it Python, be it AI, and be it API as well. So that's why today we are also glad that actually COVID also provide us with an opportunity to work differently. And again, with these tools, currently we are also able to expand our work from home opportunity, right? But of course, certain processes, certain data are beyond the limit, and which we will not be giving access. And yes, coming back to AI, we are currently looking and exploring what other further opportunities we can use. But then again, I just wanted to share with all of us here is, at the end of the day, it is all about the risk element and how deep and how brave we are in taking that risk. For example, like, would you have a comfort by leaving the computer to do your decision making compared to having a 4-eye check, for example? All right, and and then perhaps to a certain extent, maybe some of us would want to explore within a certain limit. We will leave it to the computer or to the AI, and within a certain limit and above, we will still leave it to us. Or it could be is a hybrid environment where it's a combination of AI checked it first and having filtered by the human. And then at the end of the day, in Maybank, we work closely with our risk unit, as well as our audit unit, in terms of having the comfort that indeed we want to do this, or what are the risk elements that we are dealing with in the event, it kind of not working to our favor. Yeah. So, but I just wanted to share, Maybank, yes, we do going into that direction.
Okay, perfect. So, and good to hear you're doing with regards to, automated processes like claim processes, and also, of course, you're prioritizing depending on where you want to have human and where you want to have a machine automation on that. So perhaps, Han, I could have your perspective as well as to how you are doing this at RHB, how you're prioritizing AI and, some tangible examples, and of course, how this has improved your business impact or business profitability and revenue as well.
I think we tackled that issues of AI and machine learnings from a credit lifecycle perspective. So the focus currently is on transaction level. So is there more insights that we can get it and therefore personalize it for our client? I think all the way to even collection is what we are currently doing more analytics on. From a risk management perspective, I think we continue to strengthen on the credit side. I think that's ongoing. But other areas such as liquidity is getting a bit more critical, and therefore, analytics, I think we will be able to get some insights for us to better manage, even though our liquidity position is quite strong. I think that is an area of risk that we should not let go too far from our sides. Apart from that, from machine learning, I think from a platform perspective, we are devising and more of a hub and spoke. We are building capabilities in different division rather than centralizing it as a group level analytics. So the group levels on the hub itself the key element for them is, of course, provide infrastructure, make sure the piping is there, building a proper data lake for the analytics need across the bank. I think that currently works quite well for us.
Okay, perfect. So good, and good to know you're doing that hub and spoke model. So Any specific areas you want to highlight where it has brought a significant impact for you as a bank?
I think credit part is definitely bringing us a fair bit of traction. Again, when we look at credit lifecycle, the first area that we tackle, of course, is the front end. So coming from increasing acceptance rate, decreasing the default and so on. I think those are very basic, but by incorporating new information, new data into our analysis, that gives us I would say a new level of insights that we never had previously. Because when we started building models, I think most of the banks here in Malaysia started from a Basel perspective, right? And then we built on those capabilities from a commercial perspective now. Of course, then on the compliance side, definitely we're still complying to regulations. I think the key part for us, twofold. One is the front line on transaction side, and the back end on the collection side. I think we have done a fair bit of analysis, and that have served us quite well as well.
Okay, perfect. Okay, Hendy, a perspective from you as well, but especially with regards to how to optimize cost and efficiency in analytics, how you can rationalize data across the organization to enable this real-time data more efficiently. So any specific initiative or best practice you want to talk about? And do you need to unmute?
Sorry. Yeah. One of some initiatives that we do, for example, we start to move the data that we use for analytics to cloud-based. In this case, we have end-to-end. We try to have end-to-end process, so from data gathering, storing, and then the usage. Usage can include also data visualization, data science platform that I mentioned earlier. Also, we will start to look for pricing engine, collection scoring engine, etc. So I think in a sense, for the bank of our size in Indonesia, I think have a cloud-based storage will be more cost-effective instead of we have the physical one. But yeah, as I mentioned earlier, it is also limited of the data that we can upload to the cloud or that we can store in the cloud. But other data that we need on the physical data warehouse. So I guess that's the latest initiative that we have, Niti.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. And a perspective from you as well, how you are building, optimizing cost and efficiency in analytics, how you are rationalizing data for this efficiently.
I wish I could say that I'm in charge of the cost management, but I think to build on the different points of the speakers, think of it as an ecosystem. Some of the tools that started out with, say, risk management on risk models, etc. The base engine has other modules. We've tried to encourage other people to have use cases on that. And similarly, things that happen, we are a regional bank, things that are successful in other countries can be replicated. One public example that we have is that our chatbot is an AI-based tool. We have both a retail and a commercial or corporate version. The corporate version actually started out live in Singapore, and we've only just replicated it here in Malaysia. what we find is not only does it improve the customer experience, but in a lot of cases and a lot of times, we reduce the number of call center queries because the chatbot actually answers the basic questions. And number two, the error rates in certain applications or openings go down because the chatbot has guided the customer or the prospective customer through the process already.
Okay. Perfect.
So bear in mind, it's not always about cost again, right? We started the AI chat more to help customers. It picked up a lot during the COVID period because not everybody could go to the branch. And we found the cost savings as an added benefit in addition to improving the customer experience.
All right. Okay. Perfect. So, so chatbot is definitely a very good example, and where a lot of banks have implemented that to improve, improve the customer, actually make it more efficient, the customer interaction. So it may not necessarily, it works in some areas, it may not work in some other areas of customer experience. Perhaps, Suraj, you could share with us a perspective from HP as well, from Hitachi's point of view, as to what you've seen, how banks could build this cost and efficiency in analytics. Perhaps a quick comment from you as well on this.
Sure, thanks. I think, first of all, as an end user of a bank, right? So I have seen these chatbots as well as these very interactive real-time analytics on my account services where I can make some quick decisions on my portfolios and stuff. So really a lot of transformation the banks are bringing with the AI and real-time analytics into the solution. So I think I'll give it a little bit different perspective of what we are seeing is, this transformation is going to continue. Banks will really embrace AI and ML, machine learning technologies. But the key here is how quickly we can bring this to market and how we can do this with a more cost-effective way, not blowing up the cost of the infrastructure changes, right? So what the key here is bring some kind of hybrid cloud kind of a solution where, why I say that is very importantly, we heard the challenges the banks are facing where a lot of applications are still legacy, they're still on-prem, they have issues around data controls and stuff. But at the same time, cloud provides a lot of new innovative AI, ML services readily available, okay? The question here is, how can we leverage those cloud services, at the same time ensure the on-prem applications and the data controls are managed, bring them together to get the best outcome out of it. So I would say it's more, that's why I say that hybrid cloud is very, very important to really use those services and quickly bring to market. So I want to give a real-time example of what we have done for a large bank in the Asia region, right? So what we have done here, Niti, is we built a private cloud solution for that bank in partnership with VMware and really help the bank to really modernize the data center and help them to modernize their applications on-prem. But at the same time, bank cannot bring all the services which are available in the cloud and build from scratch at the on-prem. So they wanted to go and use certain services in AWS, for example, things like recognition service, the Sage, and other stuff, right? So the transcript services. So what we have done is with tools like this VMware Cloud Foundation and Hitachi Rackscale, what we have done is we help these applications to be integrated into the cloud. So it's a private cloud solution integrated to AWS, which helps the customers to move the applications to cloud and bring it back or move across. And keep the data still under the control of them, right? It's not like completely moving the data into the cloud. So it solves both the problems where you can move the data, and at the same time, for unstructured data, we also have the object storage solution from Hitachi, where within the hybrid cloud, we put in the object storage because the data is just not structured. There's so much of unstructured data. So what customer is doing now is they can easily sync the data from on-prem to the cloud. And I repeat, it's a syncing only, right? Not moving the data completely. Just sync the data, then run the cloud services what you want. Okay, quickly process the data in the cloud, get the outcome, the metadata enrichment, the cleansing, what are any new innovative AI ML services, and then bring only the outcome back to on-prem, and then delete the data in the cloud. So sync, process the data, get the outcome, and delete it. So what happened now is the data is still on-prem. It is moved to cloud, processed it, and got the outcome they want. And there's no more data in the cloud. So there's no worry about, hey, the data is left over in the cloud, and we have some risk exposure or data sovereignty issues. And the beauty is when you're just deleting the data in the cloud, there's no egress cost as well. So it's very cost effective that way. So you're just using the service only in that few minutes of using the transcript service or recognition service. So this really helping customers to get the best out of both the cloud as well as on-prem, and at the same time keeping the controls and the costs lower as well. So these are some nice technologies they're using, bringing these AI ML services very quickly to their applications, and then helping customer experience as well. So this is what we are seeing. I'm happy to say that we are really partnering with banks in this area and in helping. This is a journey again, right? This is a transformation. I hope that gives a good view of what we're doing, right?
Yes, and it's also a very good example to explain how hybrid cloud is working in one of the banks, and you gave a good example to show, shift the data for just the processing part, we've heard from panelists some of the issues with regards to data, with data security.
And the cloud is, because in this model, then you don't need to use just one cloud. You don't need to move everything to one cloud, right? You want few services from AWS, you want a few services from Azure, you can have few services from, let's say, some Google solution, for example, because they have so many services available, and we want to leverage that. So it gives a flexibility for banks to really move the data where they want, run the applications, run the services, and then bring it back. So that's the real beauty of this one. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So at this point, I would like to have a quick comment from all our panelists, right? Actually, just a brief, maybe just a few seconds or just a couple of sentence messages. What would you like to say to our audience? Just wrapping it up. So what would you like to say to our audience who are watching and listening, especially with regards to the topic today, how to build this data-driven customer experience? So just a quick liner on that. So maybe perhaps, Hendy, we could hear from you first, and then
Okay, I think what I want to say is that data analytics journey, data governance journey, we have to we can call it baby steps, yeah, like one of my colleagues previously mentioned, because the data is so big, it's so complicated, it's impossible to have it all in 1 to 3 years. So I think it's a long journey, but if we don't take a step, then we won't get anywhere. So I think even the smallest step is very important. So that's what we are trying to do.
Perfect. Razak, a comment from you as well for our audience.
I think the key here is it's not so much about technology. I think it's the people first, then the process, then the technology. I think people really addresses the root cause or the key things like the people and process. They just jump to technology, whereas technology is just an enabler. The people and process must be fixed first, or must be ready before we implement all these sorts of digital transformation or data transformation initiatives.
Perfect. Han, a comment from you as well, please.
I think I will go back to the point I made earlier on, given that this topic is a very multidisciplinary in nature, and therefore everything needs to move in tandem. I think that the key, probably one advice I will give is to look across capabilities across all, like what Raza is saying. You need to look at people, you need to look at processes, you need to look at technologies, and therefore look across, where you are today, where do you need to bring it up first, and also then in tandem where you need to bring everyone together. Otherwise, you'll find yourself stuck in certain areas that potentially you have the tools, but you don't have the people, or you have the people, you don't have the processes. So moving in tandem, I think, is quite key for us.
Perfect. Kamaru, a comment from you as well for our audience.
Yes, so I go back to the point that I mentioned earlier, where at the end of the day, what we key in our day-to-day process and forms part of data quality. And I think since any banks or even any industry today, we rely a lot on data to make decisions. So I'm a strong advocate of a clean data or a data quality. And of course, that itself is a big project if you were to do a cleanup. But then again, I think as long as we start somewhere to get our data in order and in place, I think that's the right thing to do. And yes, agree with some of our colleagues here. It starts with the people as well as the operating procedure. All right. And I think the second takeaway that I want to share with you is I think we need to be very open moving forward that as part of, at least for Maybank in our digital transformation, we should be open to living in an environment where we live with, or in a nature where human and the technology, we mix up together, all right? Living harmoniously, if I can say. Yeah, and I believe, again, I'm a strong advocate on technology, that I believe we have a lot of tools in the market today that is able to help us when it comes to decision making without compromising the risk. Okay. So yeah, that's my comment, and thanks for this opportunity to speak.
Okay, and I'll request you also to make one last comment on this.
Yeah. Just a quick comment to say that in the process of digitalization, banks in particular must remember their data represents their customers. If we treat our data with the respect we do our customers, we will put the right processes, technology, and policies in place.
Okay, perfect. Thomas, can we hear from you as well? Any comment that you want to make to our audience?
Yeah, I would just say that you know, financial services is data driven, right? We are seeing a huge change in the technology landscape, and you know, we are seeing the opportunities to drive, you know, top line growth and drive efficiency within these organizations. And this is predicated on this change. And, you know, I would say that in financial services, I mean, you know, data has always been important, but I think it's especially important today because of the changes that we're seeing, you know, both from a customer demand perspective, but also, you know, the rise of different sorts of intelligent technologies.
Perfect. And Elaine, I'd like to hear from you as well, a last comment that you may have for our audience.
Yeah, sure. I think we've all heard, right? So what you can hear is that unified customer experience is actually very key, as well as data availability when it comes to digital transformation. Therefore, you know, we need to ensure that whatever platform that we have, we are able to intelligently manage our data and ensure that it's able to give us the agility, scalability, you know, flexibility and security that we need for our data.
Perfect. So it's great to hear from all our panelists today. It's clear that you know, data effectively needs a combination of holistic data strategy with right technology, data processes, people, of course, and also analytics framework. You of course need to prioritize where you want to put what kind of framework and how to go about it to have the right data framework that can give you a unique competitive edge. Not just in contextualized customer experience, but also real-time decisions and also bringing greater cost efficiencies. We also heard about hybrid data cloud, how it can bring about agile data and you know, real-time analytics through AI and advanced analytics, how that can improve your customer journeys. Along with that, of course, is how to address ransomware and data security as a challenge. So, you know, that's one key area, and managing those ransomware challenges, data security challenges, and also ensuring that the quality of data is actionable, insightful, so the banks can actually reap the benefits that they seek from their data. So it was a very interesting and insightful discussion where we got a varied perspective from all our panelists. So I want to thank you all our panelists and also guests for joining us today. We're reaching the end of session now. So we hope that our audience have benefited from our insight, from our panelists' insights and their experiences. So a recording of the session will be available on Radio Finance website for download and playback later as well. So please do register for our other upcoming Radio Finance sessions also. So thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Stay safe. Thank you and bye-bye.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.